Alright, 2015 Volkswagen. This one's a 1.4 TDI common rail. Going to the time belt and the water pump. This is a 1.4 3-cylinder TDI common rail, but a very similar procedure, and they're very much the same. You use the same sort of locking kit and stuff like that for the 1.6s and the 2 litres, all post 2014, 2015. Some of the AUDI A3s with a 1.6 2013, this may be applicable to. It's whenever we move to Euro 5 and Euro 6 emission standards. So we have some pipe works here. So your car, like a 1.6, maybe it wouldn't have those DPF pipes there. So I'm not going to show removing all these pipes. So we're gonna get into this with the covers removed, and we'll take it from there. So it's the nitty gritty of a time belt change. And as if by magic, the time cover has jumped off there. Now, I will say that this is quite challenging. You need an array of tools. You need long sockets, short sockets, medium sockets, ratchet spanners, all sorts of things. There's a few pipes to remove that go over the top of the timing cover. These DPF pipes here, and that is the DPF down there as well. So there's a bracket comes out here, and I'll show you that when it's off. There's a bracket here and the top bit of the cover. The cover is in 3 parts, and you have the engine mount. I have the expansion bottle still connected, it's just over the side, and those auxiliary pipes are still connected, and you can get them out of the way enough. You don't need to really disconnect them. You can do it okay without that. So that is our timing belt in all its glory. So down here, as you can see, I have the engine supported on a sump with a couple of bits of wood because the sump isn't flat. So there's our 2 auxiliary pumps in all their glory. And there's another video that explains what they do and stuff like that. So I'll leave a lot of links down in the description, as I said already. So that is our crank, and that's the bottom of the DPF. So, okay. This timing cover now, it might seem it's just a plastic cover, but here it is in 3 bits. So there's a bolt here that goes into the back, and that is a bit of a peg to get at. What you have to do is, I'll just get this here for you. There's a bracket that connects the DPF, and that sits about there. And that bracket also bolts onto the engine mount on those 2 holes there. So that goes like that on the engine mount. So to get the engine mount off, you take these 2 bolts out. And then you need to take that off the DPF to get that bolt out. So there's no other way of doing it. That's what you have to do, you know. So there's 2 torques there, and that wee screw there holds the DPF metal pipes that are held at the side of this. I think the 1.6s and the 2 litres, I think certainly the 2 litres, those pipes are routed differently. So they might not be in your road. Over the top of the cover is the coolant pipes and the fuel pipes. And I just took the fuel filter housing and all just out of the way. Just to give me a wee bit more room. So that, the way that is now, the shape of that, there's a wee ridge here. And that has to lift off up vertically. So that's why you have to remove anything that goes across the top, and then the pipes that go across the front. So a bit of disconnecting to do. So it's just the way the whole thing is packaged. So with the big DPF at the back there and all the pipes and all that sort of stuff, it covers it over, and it's just not as simple as just unscrewing it. This also, you need to take that off to get the engine mount off, because it sits in behind, or the engine bracket, it really is. So that sits in behind like that. So, and this bit here, you can't really get a turn on it. It sort of hits trying to get that off. So you need to take your harmonic balancer off here, get this off, that'll get your engine mount off, and then get that bracket off to get that bit there off, and you get that off first and take all your pipes out of the road. So yeah, now what we're going to do is I'm going to put this back on again. And I'll just show you why that is. There's a marking on this cover here, so it says OT on it, and there's an arrow. So I'm going to put a wee mark in here. If my paint pen would do it. There's a wee mark there, and it's dead on. So on our harmonic balancer, there's a wee notch. Now, this is basically to set the engine TDC. We're not going to time the thing using tip axe or anything like that now. I don't recommend that, not in these style engines anyway. And if we can get a wee mark in there like that. Okay, so there we go. There's a wee notch there. So the harmonic balancer goes on just the one way. As you can see, there's a fifth hole here. So there's a wee spud on the crankshaft pulley, and if you get that recessed into that, that's it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this back on again, and that bolt there is really difficult to get at. So some of these bolts you have to get from below and some from above and all that. It's not as easy as what it is. It looks a gift here when it's laid out on the floor, but I'm going to show you it's challenging enough. So we'll get these back on again, and we'll line our marks up, and that'll be our engine ready to go, hopefully. So with our harmonic balancer and our lower cover back on again, and just roughly, we're going to bring these two marks together. And on the cam wheel, there is this arrow. So we want that, there's no mark as a reference, but we want that to be like 12 o'clock vertical. So we need to just watch the two marks as we're turning this. If we look at our injector pump sprocket, there's a fork there behind it that rotates and will line up with that hole whenever we get our tip axe marks lined up on our harmonic balancer. That's us now with that one. That's us now with that one. And that's us now with the cam wheel. Now you might think that's not exactly 12 o'clock there, but the engine, you might be able to see in the sort of background, the engine is at that angle. So with respect to the angle of the engine, that's actually 12 o'clock. But it doesn't really matter. That's just to give you an idea that you're at top dead center. If you line up the white mark on the crank harmonic balancer below us there, and you're on the wrong stroke, this will be down here. So that's just to tell you that you want that in the uppermost position. And there's, you can maybe see it there, there's a wee fork, just like the one on the injector pump wheel, and that's where we're going to put our timing pins in. So our timing pins in then, that's one there, and that's one there. That's the injection pump and the cam. They're locked. So this particular pin, it's quite good. It has a flat spot on the side of it there, as you can see. And there's also, if it comes up in camera, a wee line on it there, just at my nail. And it's probably not going to focus, but there's a wee line there. Hopefully you can see that. Hold on. There we go. So there's a wee line, and that is helping me with this. So we know what depth it goes in. If we can line it up, and I know you're out of focus. And the wee flat spot there is helping to clear those DPF pipes. There you are, back in the rim. So it's going in to that line there. But and this one here is a wee line on it too, but it's actually going in a wee bit past the sprocket with that one. So as you can see, there's our harmonic balancer and our wee white marks. So we're going to pull that harmonic balancer off again, and that lower timing cover off as well. With our lower cover removed and harmonic balancer removed, we can go ahead and lock the crank with this tool here. So it goes in, there's two pins in, it goes into the crank pulley, and then that top bit goes into the recess there in the oil pump casing. Right, so our crank on our two wheels here are locked. So everything's in the position, and we know our timing is spot on. So this next bit, I'll maybe need to have to, this portion of the video is going to be a bit of an explanation of why we're doing this and why this engine here is a wee bit different to the previous generations of engines. Now you may see there's a ton of videos on the YouTube, and you see the previous generation of this type of engine, and they have elongated slots on the cams and on the injector pumps. And what you do is you loosen them up, and that allows these wheels to move about 15 degrees or something like that. So that'll allow that wheel to go back and forward, and that puts slack in the belt. That allows the belt to slacken up. And you do the same with this one. So this works exactly the same in principle, but Volkswagen, in their wisdom, have decided to completely change how that works. So that sort of movement is achieved to the back side of these, to the other side of these wheels, but it's still there. That same principle still applies to these engines. So I'll go. We'll have a locking kit here. I'm going to show you the locking kit that I'm using. I'll show you the range of engines that it's applicable to, and we'll maybe show a wee clip of this removed. Now, I'm not going to remove this. So the other thing about it is, hey, I'm going to show you a slideshow. I am showing here the Volkswagen procedure to the letter. Now, people that are experienced in doing timing belts, you know, they may come in the comments and say, oh, you don't need to do half that. You can get away with marking it up or doing other things. And yes, I would agree with that. If you're experienced in doing timing belts and you're pretty confident and all that, then yes, you could probably get away with a couple of drill bits and not locking that crank at all. And you know, I would agree with that. That's fine. But I am showing the Volkswagen procedure here, and I'm going to show it in a slideshow to try and explain how this sort of mechanism works, because you can't see it. On the previous engines, you could clearly see what was going on because the elongated hole, now there is one elongated hole on this wee spud here, but I'll explain what that's for. We will have to loosen that off, and we're going to loosen this off. And this is sort of, you know, it helps if you have the tools. So here we go, the slideshow. This is Volkswagen dealer information that I'm sharing with you. and this is what I'm following in this procedure. And as I've said before, do not ask me to send you this information. If people pester me to for this information to be sent to them, we'll no longer be showing it. So anyway, there is a special tool there, and there's the numbers. That is a generic tool. It's just a counter hold. I have a video on counter hold as well in the archives there. That's just an ordinary Allen key. That's like a wee toothpick thing, but we'll show all that. Those are those pins, and that's the crank holder there. So, okay, there's the pipes we take off. So that wee blue ring there is actually in behind that crank wheel, and it's highlighted there just for clarity. And I'll show a wee clip of that as well. It's somebody else's video, so I hope they don't mind me showing it. And that's that in the position. So the wee blue thing sits behind it, and it is keyed to the camshaft, but it allows the cam wheel to rotate roughly about 15 degrees forwards and back, clockwise and anti-clockwise, and that allows that wheel to move. Now, it's essential that you do this for proper tensioning, and there's our pin in the injector pump pulley. And so the next stage before we take the belt off is to loosen that center bolt. So the way it says to do this is you have your pins in. Now we'll have our pins in at the minute. So it says here, pull locking pin out, slightly loosen bolt number 1 there. Before loosening completely, insert locking pin back in again. Use the counter hold for loosening that. All right. So, and then once it's loosened, pull out locking pin, slightly loosen nut for high pressure pump. So same thing with high pressure pump. Before loosening completely, insert locking pin back in again, and use the counter hold for doing that, which is T10051, which is that thing there. So it's a counter hold with 3 spuds in it. Now you could make that, of course, but if you buy the locking kit, it just makes it so much easier. And if you want to do it properly, this is how you do it. And there's that counter hold in there, and that is the crank holder back in again. So that's for removing the belt, and that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to show that on camera because I don't think I'll be able to film that, but that's what we're going to do now, and we'll show that wee clip. So here we can see this guy here taking this cam wheel off, and we'll see what's in behind here if we just follow it along. So here's the wheel loosened, the wee Torx bolt loosened and removed, although you don't have to do this. So I think he's doing that because that rear cover, he's left it on. So there's that wee ring, and that's able to move that amount of degrees in behind there. And as you can see, this wee bit here is keyed into the camshaft. So we might get a wee shot of that if he moves the camera back over again. So up here you can see the keyway in the camshaft there. So that's how that works. Now if you see, he has not removed that rear cover there. So he had to do that because he didn't remove that cover. So that's a kit that I'm using there, and as you can see, it does 1.4, 1.6 and 2 litres. That's not the exact one I'm using, but the Laser do this kit, and I'm sure if you type it into Google you'll find it. Do not ask for links. So there is, I'll just keep that up on the screen, there is the range of engines that this kit covers. So as we can see, there's 2012 onwards, A1, A3, 14 to 16, 13 to 16, 13 to 16, 12 to 16, 13 to 16, 14, 16, and the 1.4s, and the 2 litres, and the 1.6s, 2012 to 16 with those engine codes, and that is the equivalent Volkswagen numbers what you get in the kit. So Polo, Scirocco, Seat Leon, and Skodas, Jettas, Passats, Golf Mark 7, Q5 there, A4, A6. So that's the range engines there. I'll maybe scoot that up a wee bit more for you. And that's an eBay listing. So if you see your engine code in there, that's what we're doing here. So that's the Laser Tools part number there, 6809, and that's that kit there. Now there are cheaper ones available on eBay, you can see, but that's what you're looking for there. So it's part number 6809. So we've went ahead and done that, and that bolt is loose. So I've marked it with paint at where it was originally at the 12 o'clock position, and we'll move it 90 degrees there. This wee one here, which we just loosened with the pin in, that's on a half turn, so there's a wee mark there at 6 o'clock, maybe you can see it. That's 90 degrees right round, and the same here with this one. So that was originally up there, and the wee paint marks are just really for demonstration. So when you do that and you're counter holding that using this tool here, so that's the counter hold that goes into those 3 holes there, and you just put a ratchet or a bar or something in that. What I found anyway, that's brave and tight, so that wee fork in there that it's now pinned into may move on you. So just get a spanner, just nip that up very, not too tight. Just nip it up, and with this still loose, you rock your crank back a wee bit. Okay, just rock your crank back a wee bit, and put it back into line again. It's very, very minute. It's very difficult to counter hold that and that wee fork not to move because of the tightness of that. But it's no big deal. It's not the end of the world. So we'll have that loose then. And we get our pins in, our crank pin is in, and that's in, and those are loose. So now we're ready to untension this belt. Right, so untension this a wee loosen up here, and there it's sliding out by itself. So we just loosen that off anti-clockwise, and that should be enough for to get the belt off. So we just slide the belt off the water pump. That's it. So we're belt off, and this job is actually about changing the water pump, although we are going to put a new belt on it, but we're going to reuse the tensioner and reuse that top pulley. But I recommend if you're doing a 10 belt job, you change everything. Water pump, that and that. So this car has about 50,000 miles on, but the reason why we're doing this is to change the water pump. So 3 triple square bolts, I've them removed, and I just pulled her off, and I just let her drip, so it wasn't stuck on or anything, which is a bit unusual. It just wiggled off from my hand. So what I'm going to show you now is there's a wire on the back of that water pump, so that water pump won't just come off. And there's a wire down here, and you can see I have the intake tube removed, and that connector goes onto the back of the water pump. So I'm going to just unclip that, and then that'll release the water pump. On this particular one, the wire is at the back, so I've had to take the intake tube off and the airbox out, which is a bit of a pain. On the 1.6s and the 2 litres, depending on your engine, that wire is actually at the front here. So it's a lot more accessible, and you don't have to go into the back side of it. So I've a new water pump fitted to this car, and if you're going to do a belt change, you want to change this tension, this pulley. On the 1.6s and then the 2 litres especially, there's another one of these guide rollers on down because the engine's a wee bit more elongated. So before we put the belt on, we want these 2 wheels, turn these clockwise to their stops. That's it. And what we'll do then, start at the bottom at the crank, and then in a clockwise manner put the belt on and finish and slide it over the water pump. So that's our belt on. That's a new belt, a Gates belt, and that's the size of it there. It's 145 by 25 mil, so 1450 millimeters. Now, your new belt is going to be very sort of rigid, and it sort of is a bit non-compliant because of that. So putting these belts on can be a wee bit of a challenge. So I'll just run through a couple of wee sort of pointers and what I ended up sort of having to do here to get this on. It wasn't a big deal, but it's just a wee bit outside of what the procedure said. So what was said right at the start was you need to turn these 2 wheels clockwise. You have them loose. You have that wee torque screw loose. And you have that loose. And you have that loose. And you have your crank pin still in. If you can see that down there. Without knocking the camera too much. And you may notice I have a thing stuck in this tensioner. Okay, so in that kit that I had, and in the procedure as well, it showed you this toothpick thing. Now, this tensioner didn't accept that because that is just a round hole there, or it'll need a round hole for that to go in. So I had that wee pin which has a wee flat end on it. So there's like a wee sort of slot in it, in this tensioner. And what you do is you sort of have to put the tensioner in a reverse position. Now, of course, I don't know where I mentioned it before, but you need that in the slot first of all. Make sure that is home. Very important. Very easy to overlook. And if you notice, our pointer is way down. It's way down. So if you put something in that wee hole, whether it's round or whether it's flat, and you turn the tensioner clockwise against that, it actually puts this in like a reverse position, and you'll get a wee bit more play on your belt then. So you have to do that. There's there's no other, you can't get it over the tensioner because of this lip. And as I said, you need to put the belt on the clockwise direction. And the reason why you're going clockwise is you're wanting these wheels to always go clockwise. So what I ended up having to do, because this is so rigid and it's very tight, you actually think that the belt is the wrong belt and it's too short, but it's not, So what I ended up doing was I put this cam wheel in the clockwise, as clockwise as it goes, and I nipped that up a wee bit, and I nipped that up a wee bit too, but just that one there was just finger tight, but just use that as a wee clamp, and it's so that wouldn't sort of fall back from the clockwise again, so it wouldn't go round the other way. With this in its fully sort of reverse position, and when you go to try this, you'll know what I'm talking about, but you end up with that wee pointer down the way. I then pulled on this belt as much as I could. Now, not a big massive tug or anything like that, so I'll just bring it down here. So I just pulled it taut so it would go round the crank and slot in. So you're trying to keep as much sort of tension on this side here as I could. Now, because the belt is very rigid, whenever you try to slide it over the water pump, it pops off this crank. It's very, so you're pulling it out to go over the water pump, and by doing so, you're sort of pulling it off the crank. So I just have a couple of wedges. There's no real, it's not really that tight there. It's just holding it there. So it's just so it doesn't fall off the bottom cog. So that's all right. And then pulling it tight this way Just keeping the tension on, and with this wheel clockwise, you slide that into the teeth, and you're able to get it on the water pump now. And there is no room for maneuver. Like, it has to be, if you haven't got a bit of thought on that there, a bit of thought on that, you'll not get it on. It just doesn't go on, and it fits. It's very neat, you know. So that's the belt on, and we've replaced the belt, replaced the water pump. That's what this job is, and we are reusing the tensioner, and we're reusing the pulley. Now, before somebody shouts in the comments, "Oh, there's a TSB for renewing that tensioner because it squeaks," that's correct. This customer decided to do it. That's what he approved here. It's sort of like a halfway house. This job is to change a water pump, but we're putting a new belt on because I just draw the line there. I'm not reusing the timing belt, and that's it. So it's on his head, be it if this tensioner starts getting squeaky or starts failing. There's about 50,000 miles in this car, and you know, there'll be another 50. Say, I think the interval is 210,000 kilometers or something. It's about 120,000 miles, something like that. And you know, I'd recommend this change about 100,000, 110,000, and it'll be the whole lot, water pump and all, the heap, you know. So if you have a 2 litre or one of the bigger engines, you have one of these pulleys down here, as I said before. So leave it off, and that'll make that sort of go straight up, because that pulley pushes the belt in, and that takes away. So you'll be able to get that pulley in after you get the belt on, but before you tension it, clearly. So a few wee hints and tricks there. Hopefully that helps. Now, before we move on, I now have to loosen this again and loosen this again before I tension this. Okay, that's it more or less in its final position. Now, just to explain what I had to do, and this will happen. So this has happened to me before. So with these two pulley wheels in the fully clockwise position, and then I tensioned the tensioner, it didn't move them back enough to go into the sort of center position where you want that hole there. So I'll try and get you in on that. So you want that wee Torx screw there to be in the center of that elongated hole. So that means it's in the center of the 15 degrees movement that I was talking about. And the same with this pulley. So what I did was I put the tensioner back into its reverse position again, had my timing belt sort of wedged in on the crank pulley at the bottom still, and I just slipped the belt off and turned it back anti-clockwise 1 tooth, and it did the same with that. Now, where you want that to be is, you see that sort of second line there? You want that pointing onto the pin. So I'll show you that in the procedure. So it does say that in the procedure that if that is off, you know, to take the belt off and do it again. But all you have to do is take the belt off, put that tooth back, and slip the belt back on again, and slip it back onto the water pump, retension it with the bolts loose. All right. So then what I did was I put the tensioner pointer at it, and you're not gonna see that. Yeah, just about. You get the tensioner pointer in the sort of mid position, but I like to put it over to the right of the wee gap, the wee pointer, because whenever you spin this over a couple of times, it will take up. You know, you'll lose that tension a wee bit. So you tighten these nuts up to 20 Newton meters, just. That's all, and give that a wee nip up. So 20 Newton meters on that as well. If you can see that. On this one, 20 Newton meters. So that's what they're sitting at the minute, 20 Newton meters. And you turn it over and refit your pins. Now there is a wee bit of slop in that crank pin down there. So it's very, very little. You know, I found that that crank pin, or the camshaft pin, was, you know, very tight. So we just give it a wee touch, just a wee bit of weight on it, you know, either way, and the fitted dead on. So turned it over twice and found my pointer had moved back. And it moved back just to the left of the slot, so I just retensioned that up again, and with these still tight, with these still at 20 newton meters, and turned her over again, and she remains in the final sort of resting place there. You can just about see it. It's a wee bit over to the right of it, but Volkswagen say 5 mil either side of that is fine, which seems a lot, but that's what it says in the procedure. So it's essential that these are in the mid position. In the mid position, you don't want that and it's on its stop. So that's about it. So with the pins out, I'm going to take these pins out. You must, whenever you're putting the final torque on these, you run the risk of bending those wee forks there that they're you know, held in with. So, well, you will bend them, you know. So pins out. That one there is 100 newton meters, and that one is 95 newton meters. The tensioner, you're supposed to renew the bolt, and it's a stretch type, so it's 20 newton meters plus 45 degrees. Pardon me, I didn't change the tensioner, so tight's tight and that. Just tighten it up, and that's really all I have to tell you, and put it back in again. So I'll just show you a wee graphic of this, of where you want this to be. So that one's pretty self-explanatory, in the middle of the elongated hole, and this one here, I'll just show you a graphic of it. So that's the injector pump pulley there. So there's where you want that to be, at that position. So it's that middle slot facing it to the pin, or that one there up the way, and you don't want it to be in that position there. So there we go. I think that's really it. You turn the crankshaft twice, it gives you a full engine rotation, and check your pins. Don't counter, whenever you're using a counter hole, don't have the pins in. So yeah, there's a wee bit more to it, meets the eye. I would recommend the locking kit, and you know, if you do have a procedure like this, by all means, I think it certainly helps. I've had to refer to it a couple of times. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed the video, and that's it. How to change the time belt on the newer generation Volkswagens 1.4, 1.6 and 2 litre TDI common rails. So thanks for watching, all the best, and bye bye.